What's going on, y'all? It's Chinjirai, and I'm here with Des Freedman, who is my colleague, and we're both in communication scholars for justice. What's going on, Des? How you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right. We're here today because Communication Scholars for Justice has written a letter and issued a very important petition, and we want everybody to be, kind of up on what's going on. So, um, Des, could you tell us a little bit about what this sort of campaign is?
Sure. Well, the headline is that we are members of the International Communication Association. That's the biggest group of communication scholars on the planet. And you would think that they would be they would really want to issue a public statement condemning the genocide, not least because of the number of journalists who have been killed in Gaza. This should be pretty close to our hearts. And what's happened is that as part of the political engagement policy that they have, an Egyptian scholar issued this, sent this great statement to the executive committee, and they declined to publish it. And even worse than that, they said, we are going to consider suspending the whole political engagement policy. And so what we have now is an emergency board meeting of the ICA, which is going to consider scrapping the policy, which would then make it possible to issue the kind of statement that we think is much needed around issues like genocide in Gaza.
Thank you. And so I want to go into what's going on with the International Communication Association, because this is alarming to me. And I really want to make sure that everybody has the right information so we can push this organization to do what makes sense here. But I also want to zoom out quickly just to talk about the situation in Gaza as it stands right now. As things stand, there is a kind of what's being called a ceasefire, but in fact, Palestinians continue to be killed, and Israel has blocked various kinds of aid, healthcare. As I'm sure most people know at this point, according to the health ministry, over 67,000 Palestinians have been killed, and over 170,000 injured since October of 2023. And of course, this did not start then. There have been, hundreds of journalists killed. Is relevant when we're talking about the International Communication Association, as well as a scholasticide has occurred in Gaza. Right, all knowledge producing and cultural institutions have essentially been destroyed. Although, of course, Palestinians continue to find ways to get those things done. All the healthcare institutions have been damaged, and it's basically the healthcare system is in ruins. And I think that that's all in the context of, even, worrisome plans about what's going to happen in the rest of Palestine as well. So this is the larger context, just to set that stage. Now, let's talk about, has ICA, what has been their policy on statements previous? Is there some kind of exception here?
Well, the first thing to say is that a couple of years ago, they passed, as part of this political engagement policy, they issued a statement condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So it's not like they haven't done this before. But I think whether this is the Palestine exception or this is a kind of bureaucratic way of not having to deal with what is, for many people, the most pressing political issue at the moment, is trying to brush it aside. They're now saying that it's difficult to speak with one voice. That's the kind of phrase they're using, to represent the whole membership with one voice. And so what they're saying is, at this emergency board meeting, they are going to consider getting rid of this policy. And it's also worth noting that at this meeting, it's been made clear to us that anyone who actually refers to a specific situation, a specific conflict, which might give rise to a statement, if anyone mentions that, that'll be seen as out of order. So you're going to have this weird debate, which is about scrapping a policy to make statements where you can't talk about any of the practical issues. And, going back to your overall context, this isn't, it's not like the genocide has just disappeared into the past. It is urgent that all academics, and there are many international associations across the globe that have issued statements, and ICA should be there. as you said, about the unprecedented number of journalists who have been killed, the total erasure of higher education in Gaza. We should be at the forefront of saying it is our responsibility as academics and as communication scholars, not just to comment on, not just to be on the sidelines, but to engage with the world as it is. So I think it's a really important issue. And it's one so far that the ICA Executive Committee, I'm not talking about the ordinary members, but its officials have failed on. That's why we issued a petition. That's why we're pressing on these issues.
Absolutely. No, I mean, when so much of my critical thinking about how media and culture and politics work was formed actually through my relationships at ICA, and the idea that the organization can't issue a statement on this very clear, tragedy and outrage and injustice, and that somehow is in the name of, I don't know what it's in the name of, but neutrality. It just doesn't make any sense, and it's
partly the name of neutrality. It's probably partly the name of avoiding any kind of embarrassment or trying not to offend particular people. But the thing is that by not saying anything, I'm offended. Many people are offended. Every one of those communication scholars who used to have a university to work in Gaza, let alone all the journalists there, they will be offended. So you can't but remaining silent doesn't deal with the problem. You have to take sides. You have to take positions.
absolutely, and I think that this is clearly a case particularly when you have a nation like the United States, which weighs heavily in ICA and is actively abetting this genocide in a variety of ways. That it's you are taking a position one way or another. You can't stay neutral on a moving train, as Howard Zinn said. So,
absolutely.
It's important to also note that the authors of the statement were my colleague Paula Chakravartty, yourself, and also Saif
Chain.
Yes, Saif Chain. Yeah, this is really important to also just state that these are the authors, and I know that lots of other folks contributed and offered.
We're doing this on behalf of hundreds of other people who initially signed this petition saying that the statement proposed by our Egyptian colleague should be passed. So that was, and it was a statement passed by people from 40 countries. I think that was the pressure that forced this emergency board meeting. But the kind of bureaucratic craziness is that it's a meeting which won't be talking about Gaza or any other issue. It will just have this abstract discussion about whether it can issue state. Meanwhile, as you said at the beginning, people are still being killed in Gaza. The universities are still absolutely destroyed. The healthcare system is still completely ravaged. What are communication scholars for, if not to try and understand and intervene in the world around us?
Absolutely. All right. Well, what can people who are watching this do to affect this and to kind of get involved with this and make sure that the right thing happens?
Well, if you're one of the people who happens to know anyone in ICA, particularly an ICA board member, then please have a discussion with them as soon as possible and tell them to speak out at this board meeting and say it is absolutely legitimate for ICA to continue with a policy of making statements, and that the first statement that should be made is one condemning the genocide. But I think this is something that goes much beyond ICA. As I've said, other associations have done it. The National Communications Association has issued a statement. The American Sociological Association, many different than that, the International Association of Genocide Scholars. There is a precedent for making statements. So if you are an academic, please make sure that your association is discussing this, is trying to put pressure, because we know it makes a difference. When Donald Trump spoke to his friend Bibi Netanyahu and said, Bibi, the world effectively, you can't win this because the world is not behind you. What he's saying is there is so much resistance around the globe, so many protests, so many pieces of direct action, so many statements that have been issued. There is this huge well of opposition. That has an impact. So anything you can do to add your name, either personally or institutionally, for an academic, All of this cumulatively makes a difference. And it's just so important to think, to have a sense that we can achieve things. Apartheid, it took a long time. It took a lot of action. It took a lot of people saying, we're not going to issue a statement because it's too embarrassing. Things can change, but only if we act collectively together.
Absolutely. And I think that's a good note for us to end on. All right. Well, please feel free to share this, spread the word, sign the petition, talk to people, and let's make this organization make a move that's something that we can get behind and end this. So thank you.
Thanks,
All right. Thank you, Des. I appreciate it. All right.